Welcome to the Problematic Podcast, where I interview leaders who are solving important problems and helping improve people's lives. Follow this podcast to hear from visionary business leaders every single week. And now here's Chris Winter. Okay, could you tell us about yourself and what problem you are solving?
Yeah, my name is Chris Winter. I'm a neurologist and sleep specialist. I've written 2 books about sleep, The Sleep Solution and The Rested Child. I host a podcast about sleep called Sleep Unplugged. And I guess the problem that I'm solving fundamentally is, I guess, on the surface, trying to help people sleep better. But I think on a deeper level, that all starts with understanding sleep better. So I'm trying to help people understand sleep better because I think it's a huge problem.
Okay. And why are you actually passionate about sleep itself?
Well, I like to do it. I've done it for a very long time. You could argue that I've done nothing more in my life, if you put it in buckets, than sleep.
Right.
I just find it to be interesting. And, I kind of wanted to be a doctor for many years. But what's great about sleep medicine is that everyone's my patient potentially. If you're somebody who deals in obstructive lung disease or addiction, or you deliver babies, your population will never be as big as mine. Everybody sleeps. Now, you may feel like you sleep wonderfully, but even those individuals I can have conversations with about, well, let's make your sleep, instead of an A minus, let's make it an A plus. So let's enhance it. Let's take a person who sleeps great, and there are ways we can tweak it to make it even better. So it's not always just fixing the significant problem, the terrible insomnia. It's often trying to raise people up one more notch to sleep a little bit better. When you multiply that over an entire lifetime, it's a meaningful change.
What different things would you implement with patients to get from a minus or a C all the way up to a A or A plus?
Yeah, again, I think it starts with education. Do you fundamentally understand sleep? I don't think most people do. I certainly didn't before I started studying it. It's amazing what we believe about sleep. And it's one of the things that intrigues me about sleep is it's kind of at this great intersection between real science and mythology. So when you sit down and actually talk to people about their sleep, every now and then you're kind of like, what was that? What did you say about your sleep? And they'll tell you, and they're like, where did you hear that? Like, oh, my grandmother used to tell me that all the time. Or most of them, they don't know where they picked it up, but it's been picked up and embedded in their head as fact. So, to me, it really starts with me understanding your sleep and your life. So it's a very intimate profession. Tell me about where you sleep. Who do you sleep with? What's going on in your life? What are your struggles? What are your interests? And as you start to spend time with an individual and you understand their sleep a little bit better, I think that's where you can sort of tweak it. It's like I don't know, like a ski jumping coach. You watch the guy. If I'm watching a ski jumper jump, I'm like, God damn, that's a great ski jump right there. But you're sitting next to some German 50-year ski jumping coach. He's like, but look at their elbows were up, and look how their knees were locked at the wrong place. You're like, okay, I'll take your word for it, man. Yeah, I'll try to get my kids into ski jumping when they were little. I'm like, man, there can't be as much competition in ski jumping as soccer and baseball, what you guys are interested in, but they weren't taking me up on it. So plus it was hard to find a ski jumping ramp near Charlottesville, Virginia. So, but anyway, but my point being, like, it's all about the technical things, which I really get into. Hey, well, here's what you're doing with your sleep. Have you ever tried this? Or
Mm.
come at it with this, or added in a 15-minute nap at this point in your day, and let's try that and see how it affects your performance. It's why I like working with athletes, because they're the automatic lab. as soon as you tweak something, whatever it is, the shoes she wears on the court, the bat, type he's swinging in the game, you can automatically see, well, statistically, since he made that change or she started doing that one thing, this has changed for the better or the worse, or despite the fact that they feel better about it, it hasn't changed things significantly one way or the other. So I like that aspect of sleep.
That is cool. What are some common problems you see among your patients that cause bad sleep?
Yeah, the problems you can sort of divide into two big categories. There is the obvious category of people who feel like they can't sleep. I just got an email from somebody in the Virgin Islands, and they're like, I was doing all right, and then 9 months ago, I stopped sleeping. And then all the stuff that kind of fell from there. So not only is it a lack of the patient's education about sleep, but then she rattles off all the stuff that doctors are trying for, and you're like, and these people have no idea what they're doing. So there's a clear problem of a medical lack of education about sleep. I mean, I didn't get much training in sleep when I was in medical school. I mean, that was shockingly poor. I know all about gallstones, but not so much about sleep. A very common problem that people come to all kinds of doctors with. So, that's one category. And then the quieter category that I think is far more serious are the individuals who are excessively sleepy. They have no trouble falling asleep. They sit down to watch a movie or listen to your podcast and they are out cold immediately. It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny when dad goes to synagogue and sits down, and as soon as everybody starts worshiping or whatever they're doing there, he's asleep, and people call him names and stuff, and he denies it, and so yeah, it's kind of funny, and it's sort of a great fodder for a joke within the congregation, but it's a serious problem, and unfortunately, we live in a media society that loves to talk about ways to help people fall asleep faster, because those individuals are sort of the squeakier wheel. They're the ones who are complaining about their sleep. And you look at the guy falling asleep quickly, it almost seems like a superpower. Like, there's probably people in the group there that are like, oh man, I wish I could fall asleep like Jonathan there. Man, he every time he sits down, he's asleep immediately. I'd like to be like that. And so I think that we focus so much attention on this state of inability to sleep, which doesn't exist, by the way. It's impossible not to sleep. I mean, I'm 51 years old. You want to talk about all the patients I've met who can't sleep? It's a big fat zero. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't people who have trouble sleeping or struggle to fall asleep quickly, whatever that means. But everybody has to sleep. It's a biological necessity. So, but for those people who struggle, they look at the excessively sleepy people and just long for their problem. So, when in fact, those are the people that I think are much more putting themselves in danger than not. So those are the two big groups of problems. And so you can go over to the group that's falling asleep all over the place, and they can have sleep apnea, they can have narcolepsy, they can have restless leg. And you go over here to the individuals who are struggling to sleep, and it can be some sort of physiological insomnia or some other symptom of a disorder, like they have GERD and they're constantly having reflux that's waking them up during the night, but there's something going on with their brain that doesn't make it seem like they're actually sleeping. So when you talk to the partner's like, oh, they sleep all the time. I don't know why they're always complaining that they don't sleep. But from their patient's perspective, they get in bed and that GERD is kind of doing something all night long to disrupt their sleep to the point where they don't feel like they're sleeping. So now they feel like I've got to do something in order to sleep because I'm not sleeping. So it becomes this kind of anxiety filled juggernaut kind of thing. So I love diving into these problems and figuring them out, because unlike a lot of my colleagues in medicine, there are many disorders that are just, they're malignant. You can't do anything about them. We can maybe, make it more comfortable for you or this or that, but we don't have a cure for that disorder. And sleep's not like that. We can fix people's sleep problems, but we just need to talk to them. If they
Yeah.
don't know you exist, they never come. So but it's a very rewarding profession. It's great.
Cool. So, when one of your patients that comes to you says they suddenly couldn't sleep as good, like what aspects of their life just had a ripple effect when they got bad sleep?
Oh yeah, everything. And again, when somebody says to me, "I stopped sleeping 6 months ago," I hear them. What they're saying is something changed about their sleep. I can promise you this, if we had some wires taped to their head over the last 6 months, we would say, well, they're sleeping quite a bit here. But something has changed where they are not happy or satisfied with their sleep anymore. And that's all I really care about. That's the meaningful part. And then it becomes, in fact, the first question I'll often ask a patient is, when you say you haven't slept in 6 months, what do you mean? And they'll often say, well, I'm sleeping, but I just wake up a lot, or it takes me a long time to fall asleep, or I'm waking up, 3 hours before my alarm clock goes off. So some people, it almost becomes like an expression. Give me a Coke. Well, in some places in the country, give me a Coke means give me a soda. They don't necessarily want a Coke. If you hand them a Coke, they're like, I don't want this. I want the Sprite. You said I want a Coke. Yeah, I meant I want a soda. So, for a lot of people, it just becomes language. I can't sleep. Well, I don't mean I can't sleep. I just mean I'm having trouble sleeping. Now, for some people, when you ask them the question, what do you mean when you say you haven't slept in 6 months? They'll look at you and say, I haven't slept in 6 months. And they're totally serious. They're not wasting my time. They're not lying to me. That's their belief. That's their perception of what's going on, even though the partner sitting next to them is looking at me kind of like, it's not exactly what I'm seeing. Right. But that's what they're experiencing. So what comes from poor sleep is everything. First and foremost, it's often anxiety about it. People understand in 2024, sleep's really important for your health. So if your belief is that you're not getting it or getting enough of it, it's not a big logical jump to think, oh God, I'm doing something that's really going to harm my health. Suddenly I stopped eating or stopped drinking or stopped breathing air. My thought is, oh, I'm going to die, either in the next few minutes or the next few hours or days, but this is not good. So I've got to fix it. So there's a certain degree of anxiety that pops up from this situation. You have moved into a space where your health is now threatened. So we've got to fix it. So what's the fix? I need to get in bed and fall asleep faster. Well, that's not great. That's kind of like, the coach telling you, I need you to hit more home runs, and if you don't, you're off the team. Well, I don't know if I can do that. So now you're approaching the plate thinking, I got to hit some more home runs, or this coach is going to cut me from the team. That's not the position where we perform our best. But when you're looking at other people who are saying, look, I'm falling asleep, no problem. Every time I sit down and watch TV, I fall asleep. I snore loudly and I stop breathing. Oh, maybe you have sleep apnea. So that's a very common problem we see, or restless leg, or like I said, acid reflux, or nightmare disorders, or sleep paralysis. There's all kinds of interesting things that kind of come out of the discussions of people's sleep. So, and then the problems really vary upon what the solutions vary on what the problem is. So, it really just kind of first starts with talking and letting me or your sleep professional understand what's going on in your life, and sort of being open. I find that people who kind of come to the clinic with this sort of openness just do really well. They really well. We fix a lot of people.
Okay. So what advice do you have for someone who has really bad sleep? Like, what should they do?
Yeah, that's an interesting question for a lot of reasons. The first is, I'm fascinated by the idea of asking people a simple question. Are you a good or a bad sleeper? And so you ask that of an audience, and half the people raise their hand that they're bad sleepers. I'm kind of fascinated what that means. And if you were to test the entire group, the entire audience, good and bad sleepers, and sort of rate there, like we'll bring them all into a sleep lab, we'll hook them all up to these complicated sleep studies, and we'll measure their sleep. And I'm going to divide these 100 people into a group of 50, two groups of 50, the top 50 and the bottom 50 in terms of what I think are the best sleepers and the worst sleepers. I suspect it would shock us all how little correlation there was between my objective testing of whether or not you're a good or bad sleeper and who just raised their hand when the question was asked. And that fascinates me. And there was actually a study where they sort of did that, where you can imagine a square that's divided into four smaller squares, so like a grid, 2x2 grid. And the x-axis is objective sleep quality, good or bad. The y-axis was perception of your own sleep, good or bad. So you come up with these interesting groups of people, the people who perceive themselves to be great sleepers and are. Then there's the people who perceive themselves to be bad sleepers and are bad. But then there's also the people who perceive themselves to be good but are actually really bad sleepers. Guy who walks into a meeting or goes to see some sort of baseball game, buys himself a hot dog and popcorn, sits down, and immediately falls asleep at the baseball game that he's been looking forward to going to for the last 2 months. That guy probably says, I'm a good sleeper. See, I'm so good I can sleep in a baseball game, but he's actually quite bad. Then there's also the people who are really good sleepers, but think themselves to be bad. So the answer to your question first becomes, why is your sleep bad? Well, it's bad because I have to work 2 jobs to pay my mortgage, and I only have about 3 hours, 4 hours to sleep in between my jobs, which makes me extremely tired, yawning all the time, and often fall asleep at my second job. And I've gotten in trouble a couple of times for that, and I don't feel safe behind the wheel. Okay, well, that's pretty bad. We've got some work to do. Versus the other person who's, I get in bed, I can't fall asleep at night, but I'm not really that impaired during the day. In fact, I try to nap and I can't. Nobody describes me as being sleepy. My health is excellent. I just got a lot of anxiety about my sleep. So that person's bad sleeper, that bad sleeper might be a whole lot closer to be a good sleeper than they know. So it really becomes understanding what bad means, because it's sort of like, I'm having a bad time. Okay, well, what does that mean? Like, that could mean a whole lot of things. Like, I'm at a party with a bunch of boring people, or I'm chained up in somebody's basement after being abducted. Like, both of those to me are a bad time. There are different degrees of bad time, but they're both a bad. So you really have to understand what bad means, because I think a lot of people just, I'm a bad sleeper, and helping them dissect that and challenging it a little bit maybe is sort of the first step to getting some clarity as to what we're going to do about it.
Okay. So you got
I'm
to
a
be able
bad
to.
I'm a bad swimmer. You know what I mean? There's a good one. Like, I'm a bad swimmer. Like, because you can't swim. Like, if you jump in water, you drown. Or I've reached a level in my 200-meter butterfly where I'm not progressing with my peers. Like, I was really good when I was young, but I really can't seem to break through this time that I've gotten. Like, I've had 6 meets now, and I haven't even come close to the time I swam 2 years ago. So I feel like I'm plateauing. I'm a bad butterfly. No, you're not. You're an elite butterfly who's having some difficulty right now. So it's language matters, and it's important because the stories we tell ourselves can be half the problem.
Okay. So you got to be really specific with yourself.
Yeah, and that's the clinician's job. It's not your job to diagnose yourself. Your job is to say, I don't like the way I sleep, and I'm going to talk to somebody who understands that and is interested in doing something about it, because I don't know that the average primary care doctor is that interested in diving into it. And that's okay, because it's maybe not their job either. I'm not that interested in your early contractions and the fact that you said your water broke. Well, great. You need to find somebody who knows what to do for you, because everything I know, I delivered one of my children, and everything else I know, I'm probably learned from watching on television. Like, you need hot water and newspapers or something. I don't know. So, like, again, it's about finding somebody who really wants to ally with you. And we know that. I mean, do a podcast with somebody who's active in the chronic pain community. Like, ask them how many doctors just dismissed you. Lyme's disease, there's all kinds of chronic fatigue. Like, And that's okay. I mean, again, I'm sure I've been dismissive of all kinds of people all through my life, but I embrace the sleep community that's having problems. I want to chat. I want to fix it. And it's the most rewarding thing in the world. So you've got to find somebody who is running towards your problem, not here's a sleeping pill, here's some Ambien, and goodbye. Who's kind of running away from it, like like I just gave her some Ambien. I hope she never comes back because I don't know what to do. Because right, you never were trained. You don't know anything about sleep. I don't know anything about delivering babies. It's okay. stick to our strengths.
Okay. How big of a problem do you think the lack of sleep actually is in the United States?
I think it's a big problem. I think that the ability to get by on inadequate sleep and the ability to thrive on optimal sleep are two very different things. And so I always think of that as the spectrum, right? There's the people on the far left of the spectrum who are like, "Oh, hey, Chris, yeah, well, my wife wanted me to come see you, but I'm just here to kind of to amuse her. I'm doing fine." And I'm like, "Well, tell me about your sleep." Well, I don't know. The markets tend to close in Hong Kong around 2 a.m. So I'm usually going to bed around 2:30, 3 o'clock, and then I'm up at 6 when the market's open. And this place, I'm making these up. That probably makes no sense. So, and you're like, well, wait a minute. When are you sleeping? Well, generally I'm getting about 4 hours. I'm good with 4 hours because I got to get my triathlon training in and blah, blah, blah. So as you're sitting there talking to me, like, man, it's amazing how successful you are. And I've seen the cars you drive and the house you live in, and it's awesome. But this is not sustainable. And you're hurting yourself over time. You're able to do this because you're in your late 20s. This is not something that's going to serve you well as you get older. So so that person's on the far end of the spectrum. They don't believe in sleep. They need to read. So I wrote 2 books. The book they need to read is not my book. They need to read Matt Walker's book, Why We Sleep. Like, I need you to be scared a little bit about what you're doing to yourself. So that's the person on the far left. The person on the far right is, I can't sleep. I'm scared. I get in bed. It takes me hours and hours to fall asleep, and it's going to hurt my head. Like, I need that person to kind of, let's relax a little bit about sleep. Like, you're really wrapped up in this thing. I need you to be more like stockbroker guy, who's just, like, yeah, I get it when I get it and I'm good no matter, like, so I need both of those people to move towards the middle, which is you value sleep. You understand how important it is. You set aside the right amount of time for it. That's the right amount of time for you as an individual. And then you kind of let it go a little bit. Then you're like, okay, I've done what I can do. Like, I'm planning on eating 3 meals today. I'm gonna have some overnight oats when I finish talking to you. I'll have some lunch, hopefully with some beans in it to keep my cholesterol down. And then I'll have a nice, reasonable dinner tonight. Now, maybe I skip lunch today because I'm just not that hungry. No, I don't care. That's okay. Like, that seems to be a normal thing every now and then. You're not that hungry and you skip a meal. Like, so I need people to kind of have that attitude about sleep. I have a plan to get my 7 hours tonight, but it might go sideways through things I can control or things I can't. And if that's okay, then we'll just do better the next day, but it's okay. So, like, those are the kinds of things that we sort of work on with people in terms of getting their mindset about sleep correct, because to some extent, sleep's like the sun. It's coming up tomorrow. There's nothing, I mean, no matter what you do in your life today, the sun will most likely rise tomorrow. So we're okay. And sleep's kind of like that too. Like, kind of like, no matter what you do, and studies have shown this for years, like, put a little thing on people's wrists about their sleep and ask the question, okay, over any 30-day time period, what does it show? It shows enough sleep. So we just have to make the choice to get it. And I think the problem with our sleep deprivation comes that we have so many fun things we could choose other than sleep that it kind of makes it hard. Like, when I was growing up, the TV had this weird little test pattern signal after David Letterman went off. So Letterman went off at 1:30, and then there was nothing else. Beep. So what are you really going to do? I guess you could play Legos. I guess they're open 24 hours a day. You could, I eventually got a VHS tape, but by and large, you were just in this culture of there's nothing to do. Let's go to bed. It's time to bed. And so I think we live in a time now where we can instantly communicate with everybody. Like I couldn't call my best friend at midnight, wake his dad up, and he'd beat my ass. Like that. So couldn't call Sean. Hey Sean, what are you doing at 3 a.m? Because he's probably asleep too. Like so, but now everybody's kind of connected, and I can watch any movie ever at any point I want to watch over and over again. Like every question I can imagine. Who was the lead singer of Journey before Steve Perry? God damn, what was that guy's name? I can look it up. It's right here. So turn on your light, find your phone. Oh, right. It's that Raleigh guy. Yeah, played the piano. So, it's everything's right there. There's no. So I think that we have a massive challenge in terms of Journey lead singer or getting the sleep you need, knowing that if you don't get just the right amount of sleep on this random Friday, you'll be fine Saturday. Like you can do it. So how many you can do it do you need to accumulate before you start making different decisions? I always tell people all the time, you know, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. So, and I'm learning that as an older guy, I'm trying to figure that out myself.
Okay. So, could you tell us a little bit about your backstory and what led you to where you are today?
Yeah, so my backstory was I grew up in Southwest Virginia. Both my parents are school teachers. I had one sister, and I did well in school. Looking back, I don't really know what that means. It's like I cared about school. I have these. My wife's a school teacher. Both my parents are school teachers, and um, there was a certain kind of reinforcement that happened that you did well in school. I wanted to please people, and so and maybe had some inherent aptitudes, and you get placed in the high math group or the high reading group, and you knew what they were. They were called like the penguin group and the woodpecker group, and whatever. Like you're like, the penguin group's the smart group, so like you knew it, even though they didn't call it that. So then it kind of sets up this thing where you're being treated as one of the smarter kids, and then you want to live up to that, versus maybe in second grade, if I'd been put in that woodpecker group, I'd been like, screw this, man. I don't care about school. I don't care. So I found school to be very reinforcing as you kind of went along. And I found a similar thing when you would talk to people about what you wanted to do. I want to be a pastry chef. Nobody even pays attention to you. And your grandparents is kind of, okay. But if you said, I want to be a doctor, oh man, God, everybody's paying attention to you. Grandparents are giving you like hard candy and dollar. Oh, Chris is going to be a doctor. And a lot of the people in my extended family didn't go to college. I think my parents were both the first in both of their families to go to college. So it was like a big thing. So now like you're getting all these kind of reinforcements in school. Oh, you're a good student. And teachers treat the good students better than the bad students. Like, who wants to lead the line out to gym class? Oh, Chris, you raised your hand. You get up here and do it. They're not giving it to, Daniel over there is screwing around the back and, making trouble. So, so I got to undergrad. I went to the University of Virginia, and was talking to my advisor, and it was kind of embarrassingly clear that despite choosing doctor in third grade, I knew nothing about it. Knew nobody was a doctor. Knew nothing about the lifestyle, like just stuff you saw on TV. So he put me in touch with some guys who were doing research, medical doctors who also did research, and which I didn't even know you did that either. Like, okay, well, I just thought you saw patients. So, and one of these guys ran a sleep clinic, and he kind of mentored me and showed me what it was like to be a pulmonologist, but also what it was like to deal in sleep, which I didn't even think was a thing. So it was a cool way to get experience. I love this guy like a father, Paul Surratt. And when I graduated and got into medical school, a funny story, I went to the University of Virginia, and I applied to the University of Virginia's medical school, never got an interview. And all these people were talking about, man, what's going on with this? You can't believe you haven't gotten an interview. So I called them up and said, hey, a bunch of people, I just want to make sure my application's good. And they're like, your application's fine. I'm like, oh, okay. I said, I haven't told you who I am yet, but I'm glad you understand my application. So I mean, I probably said something smart alecky like, because she didn't. She had no idea what it was. So I said, check your application. So you don't know it's fine because you don't know who I am. She goes, what's your name? I said, my name's Chris Winter. And she said, your application's fine. And like 2 days later, I got a rejection letter from the University of Virginia. I tell this story because Paul Surratt went not. He really went to bat for me. Like he went right to the admissions office and nothing came of it, but I think he really let people have it. But anyway, things worked out. I ended up going to medical school at Emory in Atlanta, which was super fortunate, and just kind of never left sleep. Like I started working with the sleep people down there, but it was never really like a career path. It was just, hey, I've got a lot of experience in sleep and can run your studies and do this stuff. And maybe you could even pay me some money to do these kinds of things. And it just became a field where eventually I was like, God, I've been doing this for so long. I don't really want to leave it. So I studied neurology as a medical specialty and did a sleep fellowship and just never looked back. So, I mean, I think I've been doing it for 31 years now or something like that. So
Wow.
I was doing it before I could legally buy alcohol, and here we are. So it's a great field. It's a great community. So many smart people. I'm just in awe of my colleagues, every one of them. I mean, God damn, and I remember, this is a tangent. I remember going to like the big, sleep conferences back in the 90s, and it was fine, but I go to them now and I'm just like, wow, these people are talking about imposter syndrome. You're like, these people are just heavy hitters and smart and passionate and creative. And it's just cool to be around them. As long as they'll have me.
Cool.
So I'm sure I'm waiting for, they're like, Chris, you're not good anymore. You need to step back. So you're harming people more than you're helping them now. So I'm prepared for that day.
What's your biggest takeaway from working with sleep for that long, for 30 years?
My biggest takeaway is my silly answer is, wow, what a lucky choice I made. But it's lucky because at the time I started doing it, I found it fascinating. I felt like everybody around me was kind of like, huh, like sort of like the way I would have felt 20 years ago when I was a kid. If somebody had said, hey, Chris, instead of medicine, what about working to help with the environment or secure food for our planet, or maybe help with the fact that the oceans might be warming up a little bit in a weird way? And you're like, well, I wouldn't want to do, who wants to do that? I've never even heard of that. And now it's like anybody who goes into any field remotely, I'm just like so thankful. Oh my God, another smart person is trying to work on the problem of a planet that's slowly dying. So I think that I'm just most happy that this field is so important to a lot of people. And when you look at the technology explosion around sleep, wearables and mattresses and pillows and little tents that you can be in if your partner likes to stay up late but you want to go to bed early, and little devices to help you relax, and little robot that's shaped like a baby that breathes, that allows you to kind of release some of your anxiety and sleep. I mean, I just love the interest in the field. And it's,
Okay.
I just love, I just think about the woman who's doing, research on these, strange cells she found in the spleen. And she's published, 5 papers about that. Well, God bless her for doing that. That's fantastic, because it's going to help somebody. But man, you go to a dinner party and like, what do you do? Well, there's these splenic cells that reproduce in an unusual way, and I'm studying that in this certain kind of rat. You're like, oh, great. And you can just see people like, okay, even though my drink's full, I need to get another drink. Just walk. But like, so I have the opposite problem. Like, you're not allowed to leave a party if you mention that you are a sleep doctor. It's funny. I was thinking about Paul McCartney. He would check into a hotel and he checked in under the name Paul Ramon, which is actually where the Ramones got their name. And so there are various circumstances where I might be a little tired, and it's rare, like a plane flight or something like that, when somebody's like, hey, buddy, what do you do? I'm like, I said, I sell motorcycle insurance. And that usually is, oh, well, that's cool. All right, man. Well, enjoy your flight. And that's it. So and then I get to go to sleep, or, the part. I actually really like talking about sleep, so I don't mind talking about it on a flight. But it's so interesting to people. It impacts people. Everybody has a good sleep story to tell, and I love it. I got the best job in the world.
That's really cool to see all the interest in your field of work.
Yeah, no, I mean and it's always been there. It's kind of well, it's always been there just under the surface. I mean, I imagine there was a time where nobody thought about it, where you just, I don't know, you just get in bed and you fall asleep and you wake up and you pray that there's no demons in your house. You go plant the fields, you raise your 12 children in the log cabin and you go back to sleep. So my guess is there wasn't a whole lot of thought about it in a long time ago, but it consumes people now. I mean, and I was kind of buoyed recently. I kind of give social media a hard time, but this guy is a researcher down at Auburn, Gillis. I'm blanking on his name, Ellis Gillis, something like that. Sorry, bud. Nice guy. He did a study where he looked at the tips coming out of TikTok for a certain period of time, and are they actually good tips? Are they actually evidence-based tips about sleep? And of the all the tips he found, he only found one that he said this isn't really evidence-based when it comes to sleep, which was the tip that when you wake up in the morning, don't make your bed right away. Let it air out, which keeps bacteria from growing in your bed. And he said that's probably true. He said, but there's no link between some bacteria growing in your duvet and you not sleeping well. So anyway, so it's not a horrible tip. It's not like, eat cayenne pepper and you'll sleep better. Like it actually, kind of was okay. It just wasn't, hey, it's not strictly evidence based, but it probably is a good idea to air your sheets out and change your underwear every now and then, So those things are probably good ideas. It's not necessarily research linked to better sleep.
Are there any misconceptions you see in the field of sleep?
Yeah, lots of them. This idea that you can't sleep. So when somebody says I've been 6 months and can't sleep, I've told people in clinic, like, it's impossible not to sleep. Even if you tried, you set out, I'm not going to sleep. You're probably going to end up sleeping about 6 hours for every 24 you're on this planet on average. Doesn't mean you can't pull an all-nighter. I've done that. I've gone 48 hours without sleeping intentionally. But if you look at me or anyone else over, say, a month's time, what does that average per day look like? It's probably going to be 5 to 6 hours minimum for everybody ever. Like, you just don't find people who can do it. I mean, that even Randy Gardner, the guy who holds the world record for sleep deprivation, was like 11 days out at Stanford. And Bill Dement, who ran that research, when you talked to him about it, he said, well, yeah, I mean, he was awake mainly for 11 days, but we couldn't stop him from sleeping sometimes. Like, yeah, these are like little micro sleeps when he's playing a pinball machine and stuff like that. So he said the idea of Randy Gardner went 11 days with zero sleep is not true. So I think that the idea of what is insomnia, if you ask 100 people, just go out in the street and what's insomnia? That's when a person can't sleep. That's not the definition of insomnia. It has more to do with your perceptions and your satisfaction with your sleep than it does not sleeping. So that's a big one. I think 8 hours of sleep is some sort of holy grail for great health. It's not. I mean, eight's fine, but when you look at research, 7 hours seems to match up best with population data and great health outcomes more than eight. So if you're getting 8 and feeling awesome, keep getting 8. But if you're getting 8 and struggle to fall asleep every night and, seem like you average more like 7 hours a night, that's probably perfect. And sleep changes over time. So what we need as a 25-year-old is very different than what we need as a 65-year-old. And I think that perception that getting in bed and falling asleep fast is some sort of sign of great sleep is not a great sign of good sleep. It's sort of the analogy I always give is looking at somebody who you've watched in a park and they walked over to a trash can, started reaching around and looking around the trash can, they pull out a half-eaten sandwich and eat it. You wouldn't think, oh man, that's a good eater. He's a really good eater. He can eat food out of a trash can. You would think, wow, that guy's motivation to eat is so high that he is choosing to eat that. Like, that's where his hunger drive is right now. So when somebody sits down and immediately falls asleep at the Super Bowl party, we all need to be thinking, wow, this is not good. This guy's drive is so strong that despite the fact that he is this massive Kansas City Chiefs fan, he can't even stay awake for the coin toss. So we shouldn't be laughing about it. We shouldn't be dismissing it. We should definitely not be thinking he's a great sleeper. We should be thinking there is something very much wrong with this person and maybe trying to encourage him to get a little help.
Okay, sure. What device do you use for your own personal sleep tracking?
Yeah, I use a Withings watch. I have no financial relationship with them, although I will disclose they gave it to me a long time ago, and I think they're a wonderful company. So it's a watch, and it tracks your steps, and if somebody texts me, I can see it on the watch, and I like it because it looks like a real watch, like a really high end kind of nice dress watch, but it tracks my sleep. And I also have a little pad that they make that goes under my mattress that gives more information. So when I wear the watch and have the pad going, it provides a really interesting look at my sleep. And so I wear it all the time. If you said, how has your sleep been lately? I would tell you honestly, I haven't looked in a while. So my interest and relationship with that data kind of ebbs and flows. So I always wear the watch, but I don't always look and see how I slept that night. But a couple of days ago or last week, I was like, I wonder if I'm getting COVID. I kind of feel a little run down, and maybe I've been sleeping well. So I did go back and look to see how did my sleep that week compare to a couple weeks prior. Or I sometimes look at it, if you ask me how much sleep do you get every night, I would say 7 to 8 hours. Is that really what's going on? Or am I just telling myself a lie when it's really like 5 or 6 hours lately because
Mm.
of travel and work? And so that's the one that I use. I have an Aura ring. I think it works really well. I've got several Fitbits. I mean, people send me this stuff, man, constantly. I like them all. I think there's a client for all of them. This watch that I wear is heavy, and it's got a little green light in the back of it against my skin that if the watch sort of separates from my arm a little bit, it flashes this green light that you can actually see in the
Oh
middle of
yeah.
the night. My wife's like, oh, I don't like that light flashing in my eyes. So I've got people like, I can't wear something on my wrist when I sleep at night. So maybe the ring's better, or maybe just something under your mattress is better. I also like, it has to be charged, but the charge lasts like a month. It's crazy how long the charge lasts versus, like an iWatch or whatever, it you charge it almost every day kind of thing. So that's the one I use, but I think I don't encounter a lot of uh, tracking apps or tracking devices that I think are just terrible. I think
Yeah.
there's a market for all of them, really.
Would you say that you have optimal sleep?
No. It's funny. We did a podcast to celebrate the 100th episode of our podcast. We did 100 sleep, positive tips or something. And I was like, I wonder how many of these I would actually say that I follow, and I think my score was 87. So there was 13 things that on that list of things that might make your sleep better that I don't do. I have cut coffee out in the evening. I don't drink alcohol that often. And after listening to the new daily podcast that just came out today about the dangers of alcohol, I'm just not a big drinker, although I do drink some, like, at a party, I might have a drink or something. Um, but I have a little bit of cataphrenia. I'll moan in my sleep. I do have a little bit of restless leg. It's not bad and it's not particularly frequent, but when it happens, it's miserable. So I've
Okay.
got these weighted blankets I sleep on with that. So I exercise a lot. So I think that really helps. I'm very consistent with my schedule, but no, I think there are things that I could do to be better. But I think, kind of like I would be in the penguin sleeping group, not the woodpecker sleeping group, if that makes sense. I think I'm pretty good. I'm in the upper group, but um, there's always room for improvement.
Okay. Yeah. 87 out of 100 sounds pretty
That's
decent,
pretty
I'd say.
good. That's a B,
Yeah.
right? Most
Yeah.
grades.
Yeah, it's probably better than my sleep. I have a Aura ring actually. So,
Yeah.
like, what's your view on the Aura ring?
I like it. I like it. Holds a charge for a long time. It absolutely disappears from people's lives. Do you know what I mean? Like somebody says, "Look, I can't sleep with a ring on my finger." That's unusual. So I think it's really stylish and classy, and it's unfortunate that to me they're so attractive looking that they look like wedding bands. I think one of the things that's unfortunate is, like with the Fitbit, it was like a statement on your wrist. Like those original Fitbits, like or Jawbones, everybody knew what was going on. The unfortunate thing about the Aura Ring is it's kind of camouflaged. I don't walk out in public. Oh, so many Aura Rings, like Teslas. I was like, when they first started coming out, they were so unusual looking that they kind of advertised themselves. And, I was like, oh my gosh, I just saw 4 Teslas in a row. Like you're just very aware of them. That I feel like the Aura Ring suffers from, here, there's my ring right there. Is that an Aura Ring or a titanium wedding band? You don't know. Like, so but I think it's great. I think it's a really cool platform. And my son swam at the Naval Academy his first year, and they all got Aura rings, and like they were
Really?
pushing these things on athletes, and I think it's good. I think athletes should be aware of kind of their sleep a little bit, not worried about it, just aware of it. And is that something we can improve upon?
Okay. I guess the Whoop is kind of like a statement versus the Ring.
I agree. Yeah, and that's the one that I think a lot of and that's the thing is that when Whoop came along and some athletes started wearing it, it's so apparent. It's like, it looks like it's like parachute cord and this interesting little thing on it, that I love athletes because if they see other athletes doing something, then they've got to do it because they don't want to be in the group that's not, case in point, metallic necklaces. I love those things, man. Little woven metallic necklaces that help you balance better. I love the videos. Like he couldn't stand up straight, but he put the metallic bracelet or whatever on. So I just love that. Like it's just this fad that's crazy, but when somebody's wearing this cord braided red, white, and blue necklace that's a magnet, like, so it just took off like fire. And Whoop's kind of like that too. So I agree. I think that's the statement piece that not only do I care about my sleep, but I'm a high performing kind of person.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So do you like Whoop or Aura more?
I, I personally, and again, I have no financial relationship with either of them. I like them both. I think Whoop does probably a little bit of a better job in terms of the accuracy of the sleep tracking than the Aura Ring. But like I said, I like them both.
Right. It's probably a little bit easier to fit all the sleep software and stuff in a watch rather than a ring.
I imagine so, but I mean, I was just having this conversation with, I just for fun and for like $40, I bought on Amazon this little thing that looks like a memory card or a Roku stick, and you plug it in your computer. Every video game from the time that I can remember Atari's coming out until like last week is on that stick. And I'm like, my God, like, the console for, what was it? Metal Gear, or Blades of Steel was this big and, $100. And now it's all on. So, I'm certainly not a technical engineer kind of type, but I guess the ability to compress a million things into a tiny space is just
Yeah.
better than ever now. So, but
Yeah,
I
that's
agree
very
with
true.
you. You're kind of like, wow, it's this solid ring that how much could you really put in there? But I guess they're getting a lot in there.
Yeah, that's true. So what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Well, that's a good question. What advice would I give to my 18-year-old self? Yeah, I think the biggest one, and this is probably less sleep related, is that I think there's a danger. I was just at a party the other night and I was talking to a young woman, and she said, my daughter is 17 and she's going to be a pilot. She's already almost got her pilot's license, and she's going to do this and do this and do this, and she'll be a pilot. And that's kind of how I felt about being a doctor. And I think the advice that I would give myself is you really need to find enjoyment in the path from A to B and not just be singularly focused on, oh, I can't wait till I'm a doctor.
Okay.
Because it's fun, but you see it in older people. Why does the Spartan race exist? Why would anybody do that? It's kind of dumb. Right? Take a perfectly great Saturday and go run 5-7 miles and climb over stuff, and it's the work is fun. And I always tried to tell that to my kids. I don't know if they believe me or not. I'm like, yeah, I know you want to be the guy on the team, Tommy, that every time he gets up, he hits a home run. And doubles and triples, you hit one home run one time, and whatever. Like, I know you wish you could be Tommy. I'm gonna tell you, Tommy's bored. Tommy gets up, he hits a home run, everybody cheers for him. Like, there's no learning curve, there's no challenge to it anymore. And my guess is in a few years, Tommy will quit. He'll just, and nobody, oh my God, remember Tommy? He was so good. Why did he quit? In fact, I always ask this I work with a bunch of sports teams. So if I'm sitting there and talking to a player and we kind of killing time or whatever, I always like to ask the question, were you the best baseball player on your high school baseball team? Or rec league baseball or whatever. And I'm shocked by how many times they're like, oh no, no, it was Stevie, whatever his name was. And what's Stevie doing now? He's worked for the city. And why are you here? Well, I just wanted it more, and I enjoyed the process. Like, I wasn't down when I would strike out. It was like, oh, more opportunity to learn and practice and grow and cultivate this cool attitude. So I think what I would tell my 18-year-old self is, yeah, be a doctor. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not that great, but it's fine. But enjoy the time getting there as much as you can. I mean, residency's awful. It's a rough time. Medical school's hard. Residency's hard. Fellowship was tough, whatever. But enjoy it. Like, you're meeting cool people. You're learning about how you're going to be a doctor. You're stealing things from people. Somebody just gave me a hard time about that the other day. We were talking about, I'm like, I steal everything from everybody. I'm curious what percentage of Chris Winter is an original creation and what is, oh, I adopted this from my college roommate, Todd Johnson. He used to do this funny thing, and now I clearly do it. And this guy on TV, I like his voice. I want to talk more like this now, be a little bit more mysterious with my talking. And I like this, whatever you do. Like, I think we just pick and choose parts, and your training is a great time for that. Like, ooh, that woman who's the OBGYN surgeon, I don't like that at all. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to treat people like that. I don't want to be like, so I would just say to my young self, be a little bit more present and not focused on the future, which I think would be, because you're 51 and you're kind of on the back end of a career, and you're like, oh, those were actually pretty good times. Like, I should have appreciated them more, and I just didn't.
So focus on now, and happiness is now more.
Happiness is now. That's exactly right. And it's funny. When I was when I interviewed for my medical when I interviewed as a prospective medical student at the Medical College of Virginia in Richmond, the interviewer said, "Who is Chris Winter?" And I remember being a little annoyed by that question because I thought it was sort of dumb. Like, I thought you were going to ask questions like, okay, patient's bleeding out and you've got only some sutures and some, lactated ringers. What are you going to do? That's what I thought a medical school interview would be. And he's like, who's Chris Winter? I'm like, number one, you've got my application. You know I am. Like, but as I've gotten older, I realized he really wasn't much of anybody. I mean, he was just a guy who worked really hard to get good grades because he thought that was really important, that the A was really important. It was worth harassing a TA about a question that I thought my answer was more right than his. Like, it just kind of crazy about stuff like that, like, and I remember when all the pre-meds got together, our pre-med advisor said, y'all should, be reading newspapers and current events and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, I'm not reading current events. What is the inflation and the presidency of Bill Clinton have anything to do with me being a doctor? And as you get older, you realize nobody wants that one-dimensional, driven, gotta be this person. Like, when we started, we work with residents and other doctors and teams and stuff like that, you just want nice people. So I've told all my kids, work hard, but be nice, enjoy it, and enrich yourself along the way. Read a book that has nothing to do with medicine. Like, do something. Like, nobody wants just the doctor that all they do is doctoring. Ugh, God, I think, why? Like, you want, maybe not necessarily a best friend, but you want somebody that's got a little bit of, dimension to them. And I think that's what that interviewer is trying to get at. Like, are we getting somebody at our school that's got dimension and interests that are different, that, or is it just you're just gonna come in here and plow through it and try to get good grades, and you're gonna fight to get the best residency and fight to get the most money and fight, like, that's not necessarily what we really want. And good for him.
Yeah, that's great advice
I
to
got
be
in, by
nice.
the way, so I guess they saw something there. But I did get an offer, but I don't know that they made the right choice, but maybe they did. I don't know. I ended up going to Emory. I'll tell you, if MCV is listening, or it's actually just VCU now, it used to be called MCV, I probably should have gone there. It's like, when you look at why did you choose Emory over VCU? Dumb stuff. It's the same stuff. Like, oh, I think Emory's better. It's a better school. It's got a better reputation. It's got a better, it also costs more money. It was this, it was that. Like, anyway. So if you're listening, I think you all made the right call. You didn't lose out on too much, I don't think, but I probably should have given you a lot more consideration than I did.
Okay.
Youth,
Well, thanks for the
when you're
advice.
young.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
I got plenty of that. And it's free.
how can listeners get involved and support you and your mission?
Listen to my podcast. It's called Sleep Unplugged. We do an episode every week. We just celebrated our 2-year anniversary. It's really kind of near and dear to me now. I started it against my will. People sort of made me do it in my life. Um, but I was really wrong about it. And, getting emails from all over the world of people who listened to it, and it really helped them. It pointed them in the right direction. It gave them a sympathetic ear. It's great. So, yeah, it's called Sleep Unplugged. The first Monday of every month, we do something related to insomnia. The title of the podcast always has some sort of song lyric in it. So we talk about a musical group right up front. My wife's like, you talk about the music group way too much. It needs to be like 30 seconds, then get on to the sleep. And I'm like, yeah, but if somebody doesn't want to listen to it, they can fast forward it. I've written 2 books. One's called The Sleep Solution, Why Your Sleep's Broken and How to Fix It. And the other is called The Rested Child, Why Your Tired, Wired, or Irritable Child May Have a Sleep Disorder and How to Help. And those are available on Amazon or Kindle or Audible or whatever you like. And I'm on Instagram, Dr. Chris Winter. You can follow me there, and I try to put good sleep information on my Instagram. I'm on Twitter too. It's the same thing, Dr. Chris Winter, but that's like a little bit more irreverent and kind of all over the place. So that might annoy people. So maybe stick with Instagram. We have a YouTube channel if you like to watch the podcast. Like, I sit down like we're doing right now and actually make a video of me talking. So I don't know how much that brings to the table outside of what's Chris wearing today? What kind of shirts he got on? Oh, it's a t-shirt with a coffee shop on it. How cool. Like, if that's your thing, then there you go. So that's it. Yeah, I would appreciate all the support. I love getting messages from listeners and reviews and stuff. So whatever you got, yeah, we're here to serve.
Okay, sounds good. I appreciate you coming on. It was fun learning about sleep and about what you do.
Well, awesome, Devin. I appreciate your time too, bud. Keep doing what you're doing and enjoy it along the way.
Okay, thank you.
You bet, bud.